Let me welcome Vedran. I am really excited,
Hi.
one, to hear the story, but also I'm sure that we'll have a load of questions from the audience, and also I'll have a bunch of questions as well, so hopefully we can get time for those. But it's a lot, as we open with, so many different moving parts when it comes to implementing building information modeling, information management, and when it comes to standards, it's not a walk in the park. It's not something that you can just say, let's do it, and here's the standard, everyone read it. There's lots and lots of different pieces which include things like the education, which is a big, big deal from Vedran's perspective. And I'm really looking forward to hearing the story. I'm going to let you take it away. I'll fade into the background, but Akos and I will be here to take questions as well. Welcome, Vedran.
Thanks, Clive. I'm Vedran. I'm architect. I'm from Croatia. And for over 10 years, I have been helping stakeholders in construction industry in Croatia implement BIM by defining clear goals and processes, optimizing workflows, and providing training for working with BIM tools. Today, I will talk about a few topics, what the main challenges were in these topics, what solutions we found, and how I use Plannerly to help along the way. Implementing BIM in Croatia, in a small country, on our projects came with some challenges. BIM was often presented by the software vendors as a one-click solution, but we all know that it's not that simple. At the beginning, there were no common rules or guidelines, so every company had their own way of using BIM, resulting fragmented system with no common language. There was no institution taking the lead on BIM. Progress in BIM standardization often relied on few passionate individuals instead of national strategy or serious support from the top. Most of the training also came from software vendors. It taught people how to use specific tools, which is great, but it is not enough. What was missing was guidance on how to work with BIM as a process. After a few years working on BIM projects, I started writing the blog BIM for Me. From the beginning, the topics were focused on processes, not BIM tools. I shared experiences and ideas that came up while implementing BIM in different offices and beyond that. The blog is in Croatian language because the goal was not to collect followers, but to bring complex topics closer to the local community in a simple way. Promoting a smarter and better way of working has been the main topic of the lectures I have been giving regularly over the years. Always trying to simplify concepts that may seem complex, so even people just starting their BIM journey can understand them and use them. Through my website and series of webinars, I offered content with practical tips, how to take BIM more seriously and how to organize and manage BIM projects. One of the most useful things, at least I believe so, was the first BIP template I created back then for the Croatian Chamber of Architects. It was part of a bigger project where I worked with few more BIM enthusiasts. Together, we promoted the BIM way of working through the free workshops, which we organize in several major cities. Promoting new technologies is also in the heart of Center for Digital Build Croatia, an association that brings together people and organizations all interested in leading the digital transformation in our industry. We, indeed, that association work on different projects in different areas, but one of the main activities is contributing to standardization of BIM. Together with my colleagues, Monica, Philip, and Goran, we created templates for all the key BIM documents, and we made them available for free to anyone interested. Also, we organized a webinar series covering the most important topics for setting up a BIM project. In those webinars, we explained the processes and shared some practical experience from our local and international projects. Recently, thanks to Akos, we made some of our templates available on Plannerly, making them accessible in a new, more efficient way. All interested can now use those documents and take advantage of the features that Plannerly offers. Plannerly had templates in Croatian language, but what makes our templates special is that they're not just a copy of the ISO standard. I think this is important because the most BIM projects here right now, for them, ISO standard is too complex. So we are providing templates adopted to local needs for BIM projects that aren't quite ready for the complexity of ISO. Our work on standardization started with the templates, but doesn't stop there. We realized that starting with BIM using unfamiliar classifications and overly complex information requirements make it hard for most people to even begin, and those who do often give up along the way. That's why we are now working on simplifying and adopting other BIM materials also. First on the list is level information requirements for the local market. Our idea is to simplify those things as much as possible while still keeping their purpose, and to offer BIM standards that can actually be used as starting point by most local projects. We believe that Plannerly, especially the scope model, can help us with that also. To further spread the idea of digital transformation and to share experience of other professionals in the field, we also organized dedicated expert conference called DigiDect, a hub for BIM and digital innovation. A conference that brings together BIM professionals, industry leaders, and technology experts and showcases real-world case studies and innovations that are shaping the industry. This year event will take place in November, and we will be happy to join us as a visitor, exhibitor, or a speaker. Some benefits which we realize is by publishing our BIM templates on Plannerly, we made it possible for everyone interested to access the latest version of the documents to the free account. Also, we don't need to publish updated version separately. We can edit the documents in real time and publish them as soon as they are ready, so everybody can have always up-to-date version. Users can work with templates adopted to local context while enjoying all the advantages the platform offers. And we don't have to stop just at these BIM templates. We can connect other elements we are developing, like LOE, as I mentioned, to improve BIM projects, workflows, and bring everything together in one system. Another thing that I mentioned it is important is education. This is the one of the key challenges in BIM implementation in Croatia is the lack of qualified professionals. To help address this, I developed a training program for BIM coordinators under the umbrella of Algebra Bernas University. The goal of this program is to educate professionals who in the future will be able to organize and coordinate BIM projects, whether as BIM coordinators or in the other BIM-related roles. While this program involves the use of BIM tools, its primary focus is on BIM processes and how to gain real benefits from BIM. Through the partnership with Algebra Bernas University and Center for Digital Build Croatia, we have ensured program participants receive not only high-quality curriculum and infrastructure, but also top-tier instructors. The main goal of this course is organizing BIM projects, developing BIM documentation, and improving collaboration on projects. That can be done with Word document, Excel, and so on, but it's not very convenient, especially because we have a very large group of students and everything is in online environment. So without some proper platform, it will be almost impossible to do. So Plannerly makes the process much simpler. With Plannerly, all students start collaborating on BIM project planning and document creation from the beginning. For students who are engaging in this process for the first time, it's much easier to focus on planning BIM workflows when they have prepared templates and they doesn't have to think about how to organize documents in that process. Also, after planning comes the project execution phase. For students, it is very useful to see clear connection between what was planned and what was actually done. In that way, they can understand how to plan better and more clearly. This is where the Verify module becomes very helpful. Over time, I realized that we can use Plannerly beyond its basic features. It actually became our main place for sharing learning materials. Everything students need is available in one place exactly when they need it. Materials are provided at the right moment, aligned with the topics being covered in the course. Thanks to previously mentioned CDBC templates, students can now use not only the standard ISO templates, but also localized ones that are adapted to our market. And instead of providing pre-prepared printed learning materials, students can create their own learning materials directly within Plannerly. Using available resources, they structure documents in a way that makes the most sense to them. This not only allows them to practice using the platform, but also ensure that they leave the course with useful personal material that can continue to use in their future work. I believe that after completing this course, all attendees will have not only the necessary knowledge, but also a clear starting point, allowing them to avoid unnecessary confusion as they start their BIM journey. And I'm truly glad that this collaboration with Plannerly happened at the right time and that I had the opportunity to integrate it into this educational program. A little bit about the practice. When it comes to projects I'm involved, I found that platform is the most practical approach to include other collaborators in the process, or even the clients from the beginning of the process. The clarity of structure, the simplicity of document development, and the clear visualization of project goals are the things that greatly help me communicate effectively with all stakeholders. Standards are great, but for some projects, they are not very convenient, especially for a small project. And sometimes they need to be expanded, sometimes they need to be modified, depending on the specific project or specific client. My role in those situations is to adjust them or rework the standards to fit those new needs. This is especially true for smaller projects that want to use BIM methods, but don't want things to get too complicated because of large, complex standards. In these cases, I believe simplifying the process makes a lot of sense. In these cases, Plannerly is also very helpful because once the rules are defined and set up on the platform, they can be easily used even for people who aren't very experienced in setting up BIM projects. Demystifying BIM process, making it easy to involve all participants, and clearly showing what we want to achieve and how. These are the key ingredients for a successful BIM projects, in my opinion. To me, the role of a BIM consultant is exactly that, to take complex things and make them understandable for everyone, and to set them up in a way that anyone can use them with ease. Plannerly is a tool that helps me do exactly that, especially in what I believe the most important phase, the planning phase. Plans for the future continue with the activities we already done, all aimed to helping more and more colleagues use BIM tools and processes efficiently in their everyday work. This is, in short, my story. And if anybody is interested to discuss it some more or share their own ideas, I'll be happy to hear it from you. Thank you very much.
You almost make it look too easy. There's a lot of countries around the world that are struggling with just implementation of BIM, let alone implementation of ISO 19650. And so it's not that easy. You can't just simply say, what I did was I created templates. I used a tool like Plannerly to put them online, and I created some training and I helped people to implement it. What were the struggles? I mean, did you always think that it was going to be that kind of methodical to get to where you are now?
No, this is the last more than 10 years in 15 minutes, so it's not so easy. The biggest challenge for me is that should we copy some foreign standards and try to do BIM like that? Is it easier because you don't need to invent anything? But for the most project here, it's overkill. And I think that the projects which try to do that, it's too complicated for small projects, for our projects. I think the most people don't understand that because we don't have proper standards from before, because everything, the classifications, the norms, everything else in other countries is very common, but here is not so common. So we need to start from the scratch, and that is lots of standards at once. And then the BIM start to be very complex and probably more bad from that than good. So our goal is to try to find a way to make small steps, to make standards that will help people, that will be simple enough to be useful, but also not to lose everything they provide us. So that is the most difficult part for us, to find the balance between two things.
Yep.
The people that I mentioned, we have a lot of experience from domestic and foreign projects, so we can try to put it in our context. And I think that we successfully did that.
There was a comment in the chat about maybe looking at developments in other countries, like Dubai was the example shared, because there's been lots of people working from a government perspective, and then it would stop everyone reworking in their own location. I'll add some sort of flavor to that as well. We speak with teams around the globe, and there's a common theme. In the US, I've heard it a lot. We love ISO 19650, but is it actually going to be implemented to the letter here? Maybe they're not so sure. And also in Portugal as well. And really this common theme is about, we want to implement something that's practical, that's useful, that gives value to projects. And I think I heard you say pretty much the same thing there, that there are certain aspects that you have simplified. Maybe comment on what parts of ISO 19650 that maybe are overcomplicated. What have you simplified?
The most difficult thing is that in ISO, we have 4 documents which must be provided by the client. And in our situation, the client don't know what BIM is. How can they order BIM? So ERI and all these 3 documents before that is too complicated for every client here. In most cases, probably in last few years, we have EIR, but in most cases, they trying to order BIM in one sentence. And then the BEP is the first document we develop mostly from the designer, that need to clarify to themselves what the client want and to have some agreement with clients. So that first thing is missing, and then everything else is a little bit too complicated. That was one thing. And another thing, I think, is when we talk about geometry, it is relatively simple. But when we come to information, in most cases, clients don't know what they need from the information. They want for us, from designers, to tell them what they need. So for now, I think we want BIM. We don't know what it is. We heard that is great, and we want that. And that is the EIR from the client. So I think the problem lies there at first.
So educating clients and helping them to describe their requirements in a way that the downstream supply chain can actually supply what's being requested. I think this is the same challenge everywhere in the world. Everyone's trying to implement ISO 19650 as a standard rather than as a business practice that applies to everything that's happening at the moment. There's not really anything new. It's just essentially helping us to talk the same language when we talk about the tendering, the appointment process, and understanding how that interaction and what questions we need to ask and answer. I think that if you break it down, you're basically saying owners need to specify their information requirements more clearly. The tendering process should be a little more structured, and already you mentioned about using a BIM execution plan in that workflow. And that's really about the asking, answering, showing capability, capacity, being able to go through and selecting the right teams for the project. And then I think that the last part of that is being able to capture the requirements, not just from a geometry perspective, but you said, the information, the documents that are required, the tasks that people are going to deliver, and then being able to run that as a system. So there's stepping stones. I think that there are so many similarities to industry practice and ISO 19650 that get completely ignored. And really, it's just using a framework to talk the same language. There's a question in the chat about how do you overcome local culture to implement the standards on projects. So you talked a bit about that. Is there anything that you do? You talked about training as well, but to overcome local culture to implement more standards, do you see there being kind of a resistance to it?
In my experience, the standards are perceived as something bad, something which will stop our creativity, which will put us in some order that we don't want, and we don't see like something that we can use to be not to invent something new on every project. So maybe we don't have these standards in history. We didn't have it, so everybody have their own. So now we want to implement some standards. Everybody have something how they work. So for everybody, something new which they have to adopt. So there is a lot of negative emotions about standards. It will be easier that we have some standard that we agree that will be the way we will go in the future. And as I mentioned, because we don't have some institution that will say, okay, now we will go like that in the future. We don't know what it will be in the future. So everybody stick to their own standards and waiting for something to happen. We're trying through this association to give our proposal. I think that's the good way to starting to standardize our industry. I don't know if it will be widely spread, but that's all we can do.
So you think that it's a mandate that's required? It needs to be mandated?
In our culture, that is the way to go, because if we don't need to do something, we don't realize that something is good for us. We wait to something to be mandatory and then we will adopt that. So for us, I think it will be the case.
Is it the client that, like you said, it was a one-liner, turning from I would like BIM to I would like ISO 19650, or is there a change happening, or is it just still that one-liner? Do you see there being more of a definition about what is being asked for, or is it still just really vague? And how does that change?
Very slow. It happens very slowly. We have two ways. One way is one-liner, and another way is we want everything according to ISO, but we don't understand it. But we want everything. So I think maybe it's better that we can talk with the client and we can agree what the BIM is, then put the ISO standard with lots of document. And we don't know what it is in documents, but it's very difficult, very, I don't know, official, and everybody thinks that that's the way to do. One thing that I saw as finally as a platform is this challenge, because now we can use the ISO templates, and when you print with content in it, it looks very official, and everybody thinks that that's the way to go. And I think if in our context, when small amount of people can understand what is behind this, probably we will focus more on the structure and the amount of papers than the content that need to be defined in these templates. So that's the little bit challenge with this easy to use templates, but that's our problem, not the problem of the platform, of course.
And also it's in education as well. I think that it's great to have templates. We thank everyone around the world for sharing templates and making them available to others inside of Planoly. I think that the big thing for us is the education about how to use them. It's not just I'll add all of them and fill them all out. I think that the best implementations we've seen where it is selective and it is saying, I'm going to have an EIR and I'm going to take from all of the other documents and put them into one single document, only the pieces that I need. And I'm going to be really concise about the way that I describe my requirements. I'm going to structure my data in the scope module or in an information delivery specification so that others can then use it. And I think that it's about how teams are implementing. And I agree that, it can be death by paperwork and acronyms if you're not careful with following standards, maybe too specifically. And I think that we're seeing some really intelligent implementations in lots of different countries. I mentioned the US, I mentioned Portugal. We've got lots of teams that we see popping up everywhere and saying, I think it should be implemented like this for us. And I love that part about how you've shared that, Vedran, for you.
If I can add to that, I heard the stories from the region, actually, from this part of Europe. Then teams were even certified. They went deep into ISO 19650, understanding every bits and pieces of that. But then they ended up creating their own way of working. And the benefit, the takeaway from that effort was that actually they managed to rebuild their own processes and achieve great efficiency. And in many cases, a similar situation, the client gets to them and says that they want BIM, not exactly knowing why, but they are the ones who manage, being general planners, manage to put the entire effort into a certain direction, and maybe not following ISO 19650 to the letter, but still making good benefit from it and delivering value by the end of the project. And seeing comments in the chat as well, so not ending in the design or construction phases, but absolutely handing it over to facilities management as well.
I'm going to quickly find the link. That's a webinar coming up. I throw that in the chat. The basic premise of that one is, these guys, they have gotten ISO 19650 certified, but the benefit really was implementing the workflow, finding the gaps, seeing what would work for them, what didn't, and basically refining their whole workflow, building their team up and becoming ridiculously efficient, but by picking the right pieces. They didn't have a client asking them to follow ISO 19650. They didn't have any projects or anything, no pressure externally. There's no mandate. This will be a really interesting story as well. Hopefully you can join us for that one.
Yeah, I'm eager to hear that, yeah.
So there's other comments I want to get to as well. I realize that people have put in the chat. The advisory for the clients is to own the project, setting the needs and appointed parties to execute these. Comment, please. Is it the client's objective? How can we make it more them leading this? I think it's an education thing. I think that it's helping, and consultants like we have on the call now, and also Vedran helping teams around the world to ask better questions. But any comments on that?
Well, yes, I think in our cases here, clients are asking for BIM model and LOD 500, and that is what they want, and they don't want what they want with that model. I rather want to hear from that. I will use it for that, and I will decide then how model should look like and what information should have. But tell me, what do you need it for? They don't know what they need. They just know the highest LOD and the highest LOE, and that's the thing. So I think the education and it for the clients is the best way, but I don't know how to reach them.
Absolutely. Let me share my screen quickly. Your point there about LOD was very apt. If you jump to the events page on Planoly.com, so I think it's /events, there's also beyond LOD, which is about level of information need. And sometimes we can overcomplicate a bunch of things in our industry again, but this will really simplify it and show you some new developments inside of Planoly that make it super simple to follow the level of information need framework. It's all about defining a purpose. It's all about defining clear information requirements and making them useful for others downstream. So I highly recommend that one for that one as well. lots of opportunities. Yeah. I think that overall there are a number of different ways of skinning a cat, of building a project. We as an industry, we have done this for years. It's the same process. The client asks for a building, an asset, something along those lines. Lots of people come in and say, I can do it. And there's some way of deciding who, but usually it's based on price. And then they go and execute and try and make the client happy. But actually what ends up happening is the project's late, it's over budget, and everyone tries to nickel and dime and try and get the best out of it at the end of a project. We believe in this concept of planning early. It's about trying to make the process more efficient. And I think what we've heard today is about how, as a standard, we can see it as a benefit, but maybe taking the right parts, implementing them at the right time, and then sharing, I think, the stories of people's implementation and their journey like we are today, but helping those that are specifying, I think, is the theme a lot of the time that we hear. So how do we educate the owners and the clients, the appointing parties. Vedran, any thoughts, closing comments about that? How can we as an industry help the owners to specify better and to help the supply chain as a result?
Yeah, I want to think that this education that we give will help to have more and more people that understand how BIM works. That is one way, and maybe sharing good examples of on the successful projects is another way to accomplish that goal.
Yep, absolutely. So we will hear a lot more about that. We've got loads of case studies and success stories that we're sharing over the coming weeks and months. So we're really excited about that. And yeah, if you can join us, they'll be all published on our events page and splashed around our social media as well. Akos, any thoughts, any closing questions?
Some thoughts, yeah. So working with Vedran, it's a beautiful thing what's happening. So not only translating templates that are available, but also putting them into a local context and achieving this efficiency gain by bringing in such kind of ideas that truly are making a change in the processes. That's awesome. Education, you mentioned how important that is and what you are doing with the university. I think that's beautiful. And I was lucky to visit the DigiDeck conference last year. That was amazing. It was in an international conference, so even I could understand it, not speaking. So I'm very much looking forward to that next year as well. I think it was seeing all those, actually there were different sizes of projects, but seeing the expertise that went into those projects, that was truly inspiring. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this conference this year as well.
Thanks.
Cool. Thank you, Vedran. Closing thoughts from yourself as we thank everyone for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was a great pleasure, and I'm eager to see coming webinars to see other experience.
Thanks for sharing, and thanks for keeping pushing the industry. I think that your example is what a lot of teams around the world are trying to replicate. So thank you for sharing your story. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.